Several updates ago, ACRE added an intercom system into their vehicles. This primarily affects the crews of APCs and tanks. However, its impacts can reach as far as to the humble infantryman. So, I'm going to give a rundown of exactly how this feature works, and what are some of the things you can take advantage of even as an infantryman. So, number one, there are two types of intercom. There is a crew and a passenger intercom. If we ACE interact with the vehicle, we can go to intercom here, and we can see both crew and passenger. You'll see we're not connected to the passenger by default because we're not a passenger, we're just a crew. But if we needed to talk with people back there, we can connect to it. We're going to go to the crew for now, though, and click open, and you'll see this little box open up. Now, there are 4 knobs here that we can mess with, and you'll get varying effects based on what you do. Now, you'll notice here we have racks. I can't hook into this rack. I can just see that it's there. But if I go to my radios, there is no rack option. I can't select it as a radio to listen to. All I can do is look at it and adjust the settings if I need to. That's because the intercom system is used in place of that now. So you'll look at this rack, you'll see it's a 117. That is the same net with that is the same presets rather as the 152. And you'll look here and you'll see that there is a work and a monitor knob. So if you hover over them, they give you a rundown of what each does. Essentially, every rack corresponds to a letter. In our case, we only have one rack, so we'll only ever need to interact with A. If we want to transmit on that radio, we'll want to select A, and you'll notice up here we have a receive transmit for dash, and we want to monitor it, we'll want to select A. Now, if we don't want to transmit, we don't want to have the option to transmit, we can turn that off, and we'll just be set up to receive. And if you want to monitor more than one radio, you can go to all, and you'll take in all of the radios. For this vehicle, A is good enough, all works too, there's only one rack. So we'll turn on both of these, we'll have receive transmit up here. And now, if we self-ACE interact, we'll go to radios, and we can see it says ANVRC 103, which is just the rack for the 117. We can edit it here if needed, or we can set certain ears, set it as a different push to talk, and have all the options that a normal radio would have. Now, one of the big benefits to this is you can have multiple crew operating off the same radio. So if I hopped right now into the gunnery seat, then I can go to radios. I see I'm not hooked in, but if I go to intercom, crew, open, and I go to work on these radios, I'm now hooked into the same radio. It's no longer a case where a rack can only go to one person. It can go to multiple people. You'll see other settings here. Volume is very self-explanatory. This changes the volume of the intercom. It does not change the volume of the radio. And then you'll see an intercom activation knob. This only has 2 purposes in Arma. Live, which is just default when you talk. In TeamSpeak, you talk on the intercom. And there's also a push-to-talk option, which allows for a setting in controls, configure add-ons, ACRE2. You can set a intercom transmit, intercom broadcast. So intercom transmit will be the push to talk. So if you talk in TeamSpeak without pressing your transmit button and your intercom is set to push to talk, you won't transmit on the intercom, you'll just be talking to people around you. Intercom broadcast is very helpful for commanders. This is actually a button you may want to bind if you're constantly vehicle commander, because that essentially does what TeamSpeak has with priority speaker. You will duck all of the other people's transmissions and yours will be the highest volume. So it's exceptionally helpful in command of vehicles, and it can also be helpful in the passenger intercom, which we'll go to next. If for whatever reason you want to disconnect from an intercom, you can hit the disconnect button and you'll lose access to the radios. You can disconnect from the intercom. Then you can reconnect if needed. It's up to you. So we'll go to the passenger seats now. And if you go to the passenger seats in the Marshall, the Badger IFE rather, you'll see that you can still connect to both. So if you're a squad lead and you need to talk to the crew, you can quickly hook into this. Or If your squad does not have radios and you all need to talk together, you can tell people to hook into the passenger intercom and you all hear each other as though you were in the vehicle normally. Now, one thing you'll notice, there's no racks here in the back. So if I set work on both of those, I don't have a radio access here. But if needed, you can get the crew to use their rack to communicate with command. So we'll hop out of this vehicle now and show you the other feature that ACE added. If we go around the vehicle, and it depends on what vehicles have this and which don't, sometimes you may find an infantry phone. Now, it does not seem like the Marshal has this. We'll walk over here to the Merkava and check if there's any infantry phones on this. And you'll see right here, infantry phone in the back. So if you take an infantry phone, you'll hook in to the intercom of the phone you take. In this case, we hooked into the crew intercom. So as an infantryman back here, I can be talking with the crew on their intercom and directing them on targets. If I get far enough away, it disconnects. But it's a pretty generous area, so you can kind of stand outside the area without risk of getting run over. There's also an option for the passenger intercom in case you need to tell people inside who are on the passenger intercom what's going on. That is just because the Merkava does take passengers back here. That's just a feature of the tank. If you're inside of the vehicle, you can also call the people outside the vehicle. So let me call based on the crew phone. You'll hear that there was a phone call. Let me hop back in, demonstrate it again. Infantry phone, start calling crew. Now, because I hop out, the phone stops working. However, it will ring for as long as I let it ring, until someone either picks it up or I turn it off. So if you're in combat, you can't turn out, you can't yell at your infantry, you can call them. And if you're an infantryman and you don't have radio communication with your tank directly, or you're using a platoon, or it's a platoon's tank, it's not based on a squad, and they're not on your squad net, you can come up to them, hook into their intercom, and then tell them, hey, we have contact, top of the hill, northwest, right before the trees, and tell them about priority targets you need attacked. Some vehicles will operate off the old system. They will have an intercom, such as this MATV here. All the MATV has is just racks with a couple of radios. This one, you can mount a radio if you need to. I don't have any that can mount. This one already has a radio inside it, and you can just click use and use that radio. Helicopters tend to use off the rack system, but a lot of ground vehicles are going off this intercom system now. So, as an infantry person, it's helpful to know about that intercom system, especially the infantry phone and the passenger intercom. And as a crew, it is exceptionally helpful to know about it so that you can communicate with your higher command if you don't have a radio in your pocket, and so the commander can get broadcast priority messages out there for high-value targets like tanks. Alright, if there's any other questions, you can refer to the ACRE2 wiki. It will be linked below. Otherwise, hopefully you can use this in your field, and good luck fighting.